Mic check, we good out there? Let's see what we got going. Y'all hear me out there? Thank you, Ben. Appreciate it. All right, just give it a second. Maybe if you see who else jumps in. But hey, Willie, just wanted to talk a little bit about coverages behind pressures tonight. Reason I thought about doing this tonight was we started moving along with our installs, even though we can't. Practice has been pushed back to August 24th, but we're still allowed to keep doing the summer stuff that we were doing. So the other day, as part of our installs, we started talking about our 5-man pressures and then working on, some of the different tracks within the blitzes. So we always start, for me and our 5-man stuff, we always start with America's pattern. We long stick one of our ends, and then the mic goes B gap, and then we bring the stack backer and the C gap off of that, and then what we work on from there is we work on changing. So we've got 2 change ups to that pattern, but we always keep, for me at least, we always keep the end on the long stick, and then we just change up. We put the mic up there in the B gap first and let him penetrate with the long stick behind him second, and the Sam still coming off the edge, and then we cross our stack and mic. When I say Sam, I mean our stack backer. We cross them. We let the long stick go first. Our stack, what we would call our line or our ram, goes B gap, and then we loop the mic all the way around that to the C gap. So we use those three tracks, and we don't change. At least in that pattern, we don't change the long stick end, because I think it's easier when you have a certain blitz called, especially with a 2-gap long stick like that. I think it's easier to change some of the patterns without ever changing the long stick, so that every time you call that pressure, that end to that side. And for us, we're a right and left pressure team out of the 3-3 stack. So whenever we call that pressure, the end on that side knows that he always long sticks. Now, 2 of the 3 times he goes first, and then the B gap blitz comes behind him. And then one time the mic penetrates first and the long stick comes behind the mic. But we don't change the long stick, because I think it's easier within that pattern to keep the long stick on for the end. And then the end opposite knows that he's always going to be a jet box player. He's not going to squeeze down blocks and spill on that side. He's going to be a jet box player, trying to keep all runs and passes inside of him. And then it knows that he always works away from the side the pressure's coming. So within that pattern, it just makes it real simple and repetitive to get the desired movements that you want. Obviously, when you're talking 5-man pressures, and right now we're talking zone pressures, the thing that everybody falls in love with zone pressures is how exotic you can get with who you're bringing and who you're dropping and whatnot. And but for us, nice Washington. But for us, we try to, I'm, like I said, now 22 years into this, and been a head coach for 20 years now, and doing defense for the last, always involved on the defensive side, but now doing mainly defense and a lot of defensive coordinating for the last 10 to 12 years. And one of the things that I found is the more simplistic, we can keep it, the more repetitive we can get. Good evening, Chase. The more execution we can get. And it's about, to me, it's about the effectiveness of the execution more so than it is the multiplicity of the pressures, because you can get really exotic and really crazy with your pressures. And I think sometimes guys get a little bit carried away with the pressures and the patterns and how many different patterns you can have. And then what ends up happening is the execution or the effectiveness of the blitz has a tendency to kind of go away. So we try to keep it simplistic. But the thing that's caught my attention the last couple years is how much easier it is for us to place certain coverages behind certain patterns, so that for us, generally speaking, if we're going to send 5, we're gonna play 3 under 3 deep, 4 under 2 deep, or man free. So we have those 3 coverages pretty much at our disposal behind any 5-man pressure that we want to send. And when I was younger, I probably would have tried to play all 3 combinations behind all the different 5-man patterns that I had, and I would have tried to teach all the different insertions and rotations and whatnot. And as I got a little bit more advanced in my career and in I guess in age, with hopefully a little bit more wisdom and experience, what I found was it's a lot easier to tie certain coverages with certain patterns so that you can teach those blitz patterns and those coverages out of those patterns and not have to worry as much about multiple rotations, screwing up who's dropping where or who's dropping down or which way you're rotating strong or weak. Used to be a big blitz to formation team a couple of years ago, and kind of got away from that because I found that we probably messed it up as much as we properly executed it. So got away from some blitz to formation stuff. But when we were doing that, and it's a great theory, I'm not arguing with the theory. I just found that for us, we kind of messed things up more than we got the mileage out of it that I wanted to. And that comes with coaching and teaching. We got to do a better job. I understand that 100%. But what I found within the last couple of years with the kids I have at the school I'm at now is if we tie certain coverages behind certain patterns, then we can kind of get, the effectiveness and the efficiency for them to know that, we want to run this pattern if it's America's Blitz, and we want to get good at this pattern, and we know that we're always playing this type of coverage behind that blitz. So I can teach my free safety to always go to the blitz side, and he'll always be, whatever the role is he has, and the safety away from the blitz will always have his role. And so what we do is I tie one of the coverages that I like, depending on the personnel, behind one of the patterns, and then I don't change it from there. I keep the same coverage behind the same pattern, and then I mix the coverages up with other patterns. So we might have, for argument's sake, if we have 3 different 5-man patterns, let's say, we've got something, where maybe it's the stack Mike and one of the Lion or the Ram stack backers going, and then we've got another one where it's the 2 stack backers and not the Mike, and then maybe we have one where it's a stack backer and a down safety to that side coming off the edge, whatever it may be. What I do is I figure out the patterns that I like, that I want to play 4 under 2 deep behind. I figure out the patterns I like to play 3 under 3 deep, and then I figure out the patterns that I like to be man free, and then I match each of those up, and then I do not change the coverage behind that pattern. So when we're talking about like America's Blitz stuff, we could be 3 under 3 deep and have a certain rotation. And then maybe based on formations, how we've got it called, we may have to, check the free safety, may have to insert in a different spot, or we might have to roll the safeties a little bit different. We could certainly do that. We could certainly, because we're a 3 safety team and we're blitzing 2 stack backers, we could certainly play man free and have 4 skill players playing their skill players, and then have 1 remaining stack backer playing a back in the backfield. If it was 2 back, we would have a stack backer and a safety on the backs, kind of green dog bracket, whatever you want to call it, on the backs. But we try to, because we're a three safety team, it's a lot easier for us when I don't involve safeties in a blitz. It's a lot easier for us to play man. So what we end up doing is we stay with a coverage behind a pattern, and what we'll do is we'll change the pattern up a little bit, and then because we are a split field, try to be a two high safety team as much as possible. What we want to do is we want to rotate into the different patterns without giving away the coverage, because what people are going to ask you all the time is they're going to say, well, coach, then they know every time that you use this blitz, they know that it's this coverage. And my argument would be, if you don't line up in the pressure and you get to the pressure from depth, they don't see the pressure until after the ball is snapped. What they will see is where the safeties are and what your rotation is. So to me, the disguise of the secondary and what you're doing with the corners and safeties is more important than the movement, because the movement happens post snap most of the time. Now, when we mug the mic up, sometimes, we got to be careful. We've got to do other things than just America's blitz when we mug the mic up in the B gap like that, because then they'll know what pattern's coming when the mic is walked up like that. But as far as just a standard, America's blitz pattern with a long stick end and a mic and one of our stack backers coming in to be in the C gap, canceling out A gap, B gap, C gap on that front side of the blitz, they don't know the pattern until after the ball is snapped if you don't give it away. What they will know is the coverage if you don't rotate properly. So where we start with our America's blitz is we start with a 4 underneath 2 deep coverage that we call trap coverage. And it's probably different, than some people might consider trap something else. But basically the trap part of it for me is our corners and safeties being able to show that same palms too high look that we always show. And then our corners on the snap of the ball will slam down and trap the flat. So, thank you, Bryce. I appreciate it. But the corners come down and trap the flat. So because we're a two read palms team, a lot of teams understand that they can get the ball out to the flat sometimes to number one, and they can throw hitches, and soft flat patterns. Obviously, 2 to the flat in palms, we can play a little bit more aggressively at times. But there's certain things against palms, quick throws and some underneath types of games that they know they can get in palms, and we'll see some bubble screen stuff and some stand-up stuff, and they'll block, either the corner or our overhang, depending on where he is, and try and get cheap and easy yardage out of it. So the first thing we try to do is we try to go from our 2 shell and our 2 read palms, and when I say 2 shell, I mean our 2 high safety look. We try to go from that palms look into what we call a trap look, and we get a lot of hey, Alex, how you doing? Yes, Bryce, 100%. Hope everything works out, and you'll be ready to go and healthy, and everything gets cleared up for you, my man. And God bless you. Good luck to you. Pray for you. And when you are ready to go, you'll get out there and you'll rock and roll. But getting back to the trap coverage, again, for us, the terminology means our corners are going to trap the flat. So we're going to show that palms look, and on the snap of the ball, we're going to go from 7 by 1 outside, and we're going to slam to like 5 by 1 or 2 inside the number 1 receivers, so that if they have anything called, any check with me or anything based on the coverage that they see, and they're going to try and throw the ball, whether it be those hitches or bubbles or whatever it may be, they're going to try and throw those routes, and we're going to come down and trap them late. We don't want to show the coverage, because then they know if my corners are up. We do play some cover 2. We play some old-fashioned traditional cover 2 with hard press corners, and but when the corners are up, they know that the coverage is different. So because we play so much of our 2 high safety palms corners with their butt to the sideline, 7 yards off, 1 yard outside, because we play so much of that, the first thing we want to do within a movement is we like to put in that trap coverage. Now, when you look at that America's blitz pattern with the players that I have, I could certainly rotate the free safety down where the blitz is coming from and the backside safety to the middle, and we could play 3 under 3 deep. We 100% could do that. we could certainly play man free behind that with two safeties playing man, one safety playing the deep post, two corners playing man, and a stack player playing man. We could certainly do that. But the whole shot in palms, Willie, is that what you're talking about, or the whole shot in the trap deal? The trap deal is interesting because you're not pressing number one. So number one can get an outside vertical, and you only have a two seam hook curl player on two. So two may not get walled. So they can certainly get two verticals going down the field. And you've got to teach that trap corner that if two is working vertical, he's got to be able to sink until something shows in the flat, because that trap corner is aggressively looking at the quarterback in trap coverage. So he'll kind of have an idea if the quarterback is going to throw anything to the flat, where his front shoulder is. So if two's going vertical, we got to kind of sync with that to help a little bit, because if they pick up the pressure and they rip two verticals on that safety and we're not funneling one and we're not flying out to try and wall two, they're going to put a lot of stress on that safety. But the deal is, you're hoping that by showing your palms coverage, you take away the vertical looks, because they're not going to run a ton of straight verticals into palms coverage because it becomes man-to-man. So they're going to run palms beaters. So they're going to run combination routes. They're going to run, one vert, two on some type of outcut. They're going to run one on post, two on corner. They're going to run one on post, two on dig. So what you got to hope, by showing the palms look and not giving away the trap coverage part, you've got to hope that they're not going to be calling and ripping verticals into it, because you will have some hole shots and some things that can get to you if you don't get home to the quarterback. But with any pressure and any coverage, when you send an extra guy and try to play zone coverage behind it, what you're going to find out is you're obviously voiding a zone somewhere. And obviously, if we play 4 under 2 deep, normally with 4 under, you would play 3 deep. So we're voiding out a part of the field that's kind of deep down the field, because we have 4 under but only 2 deep, as opposed to 5 under 2 deep, which would be normal. So, with the 2 deep coverage, we've kind of, you can look at it two ways. With the 4 underneath players and 2 deep behind it, we voided out an underneath area. With the 4 underneath players and 2 deep, we possibly voided out a high area, however you want to look at it, because a 4 under 3 deep team would have another high player, and a 5 under 2 deep team would have another low player. So either way you want to look at it, we've kind of voided out an area because we're sending an extra rusher. So the idea in the passing game, all right, let's think about it that way. The idea is hopefully the pressure can get there before the route beaters can expose you, and hopefully you've done a good job down in distance and some other things, and then rotating and disguising the coverage, so that if they are a check with me, a scan, or a team that is on the ball with the offensive coordinator making calls from the sideline or the booth, hopefully when they see the palms look, they don't want to rip verticals into that, because it's not a very good theory. So 4 verts into palms or 2 read is not very good. Somebody's always going to have to run a bender. It's dude on dude. Otherwise, if they throw a jump ball, it is what it is, but it's not a good theory on paper. So, it's not like you're showing one high and you got to worry about verticals. It's not like you're showing that hard cover 2 where they know if they get 2 guys on the safety, they can stress them. You're showing your base palms look and your 2 read look, which means they shouldn't hopefully be calling verticals into that coverage. So, as weird as this sounds for me, I gear most of my pressures in philosophy and in movement and in structure. Most of my pressures are geared to be run pressures. And the reason I say that is it's high school football. We're going to see run probably 75 to 80% of the time. Even on passing downs, we may see run. So it's very hard in high school football to kind of I hope that answers that, Willie. It's very hard in high school football to figure out a passing down, other than long yardage situations, to figure out a passing down, figure out which way the center is going to turn, which way the back's going, and then pressure, away from the center's turn to try and get 3 guys on the man side. Hey, Rock, 3 guys on the man side, or a blitzer on a back that the back has to pick up. Obviously, if the center turns into the side we're bringing pressure and they have a 3-man zone side, they can pick all that pressure up. So I don't always structure my pressures. There's certain ones that I do, but for me at the level that I coach, I don't always structure our pressures based on attacking pass protections. As you go higher up the ladder to college and NFL ball and professional ball, a lot of times they'll have some run blitzes, but a lot of their pressures are geared towards attacking protections and going after how the other team protects. Does the center always set away from the back? Does the center set to the field? Does the center, that's where defensive coordinators study film and they do all their tendencies to figure out what the protections are in one back and two back and with the tight end, and do they chip, and is a back going to chip and help? Is the tight end going to stay in to help? They're trying to figure out all the protections so that when they call a blitz, they can be as effective as possible with the movement so that they don't blitz into a 4-man zone side or something of that nature. So at the higher levels of football, you would see more blitzes geared to attack protections. Well, for me in high school football, with what we see and what I do, I like to gear my blitzes towards run movements and then figuring out where we can be solid in the run game. So, I really like the pattern of America's blitz for movement on the front side to cancel out an A gap, B gap, C gap. With the nose going away, I like, backside A's played. Normally in our blitzes, our stack backer has that backside B gap, and then our end has that backside C gap. So we're C gap to C gap with 6 in the box across the board. So I feel pretty good about that. The long stick usually gives, whether it be some zone teams or whatever they're trying to do, the long stick usually gives some teams issues if you have an end that's good at what he's doing and understands how to read the front side guard, so that if the front side guard is out towards him, he's got to cross his face. If the front side guard works a gap scheme or down away from him, he's got to flatten down the line to kind of, he's never, if the guard works away from him, the 2 gap guys, the long stick mover is almost never going to get across the guard's face. So he's now got to flatten in the guard's hip and put that guard's body in the A gap if he can't put his body in the A gap. Because, in simple theories, playing a gap on defense, you can play a gap with your body or you can play a gap with the offensive lineman's body. So if you can't get your body into the gap, you've got to shove that offensive body into the gap so that the ball can't be run there. So, so when we start with trap coverage, we're looking at a movement that we feel is pretty good on the front side with a 2 gap move. We change the pattern up. And we'll penetrate the mic first and then bring the looper second. That's very good to us. We'll cross the stack and the mic. That's very good to us. But the trap part of it, when you have corners that are aggressive and they're physical, when they understand how to trap properly and know where their eyes can be when they're trapping and they get the ball run, they can be really, especially into the boundary, middle of the field in high schools, in any NFL, anywhere it's tough. But it's hard for those trap guys to the field or in the middle of the field. It's hard for them to really to really be a force player in the run game. But if they play trap correctly and they're aggressive enough and physical enough, what you end up doing, I'll get to that in a minute, Chase. Thank you. What you end up doing is you get 2 corners that are now kind of cover 2 type corners that can be really, really aggressive in the run game. And you kind of end up, with those 9-man front looks or similar. I know it's not a exact 9-man front, but you've got 9 guys ready to go in the run game real quickly, and you're playing zone coverage behind it. So all those eyes can kind of be, involved in a run game because you're not playing man and you're not asking them to pattern match. So, hey, David, good. So getting back to Chase, pressures change versus different styles of running schemes, running back, zone versus power gap running. Yeah, so like when we're seeing zone schemes, we really like 2 gap movements because it'll really test how good the center is and how good they are, especially within a 3-3 stack. So, how good are they at physically zoning all that? And can that center handle a 2 gap end coming his way? Can they chain that whole thing to understand that now all of a sudden, usually the center and the backside guard are working the nose to the mic. And now all of a sudden the center's got to chain it with the front side guard and tackle because that 5 technique is going. If you got a zone scheme working at the long stick, that long stick player should cross that guard's face every day of the week. So I love America's blitz with a 2 gap move and a long stick, or the 2 gap long stick, which is what it's called. I love that versus zone teams if we can get it run the side the zone is coming to. If we're playing zone teams and we can get a feel where the back is, I like to bring 2 off the edge where the back is and dive and end in a B gap underneath with 2 edge blitzers, because now if you teach them properly, the tightest edge blitzer, if he gets a tackle release away from him, can slam down the line and take the dive. You have another player coming off the edge that's a high quarterback player or a high wall player. So if we're seeing a lot of zone read stuff, we like 2 off the edge as opposed to America's blitz, because America's blitz won't give you 2 off the edge. Gap teams, I like depending on the types of kids I have, I like inside movements and inside pressures. But at the same time, we spill in our base, and then all of a sudden when we pressure inside, we box. So depending on how physical that other team is, I'm not always in love with boxing gap schemes. But it kind of just depends on the game plan. And we really carry our movements into games, and then we'll try and go down and distance, field boundary tendencies and things like that, and match our pressures up that way. And I think a little bit different maybe than some people do. I gear my pressures towards what I think we can execute at the time. And then, like I said, there'll be times where I want 2 off the edge to the back. There'll be times where I want 4 off the edge, or 4 from a side to the field. There'll be times where I may want to pressure from the boundary. So for me, it's more the execution of our pressures and then kind of down distance tendencies, formations, things like that, into what I might call. I really gear myself more with us executing the movement, gap sound, and then the coverage part of it first. And then, if I have America's blitz called into a zone play and I guess right, then I like the long stick coming into the front side of the zone play to see if they can chain the whole thing that way. If they're a big field team and I want to send 4 from the field, and be a little bit more aggressive with 4 coming to the field side, and I guess right, we should be pretty good. So, for me, it's more let's get our blitzes good, effective, efficient, done really well and really fast with no thinking, because I haven't made it too exotic for the kids. They don't have to roll through different coverages. They know they're playing trap behind that blitz. Our blitzes are real easy. There's a right side and a left side. So certain blitzes have R's and L's. It's not that difficult. I've never been that difficult with my stuff like that. We hand signal our calls into the defense, so I don't worry about the other team. Our kids will always echo the call because they're not comfortable with they don't trust everybody on the field getting the signal. But our right side blitzes have R's in them. Our left side blitzes have L's in them. So whether it's Rain Lightning, Rock Lake, Rob Lou, Roger Linda, doesn't really matter what the words are. You have right side blitzes and you have left side blitzes, and we make it that simple. And then we have middle blitzes, where we might have a cross between a Mike and a stack backer, but we know that we're bringing all 3 stack backers and they're coming in between from B gap to B gap, or somewhere in, those 3 guys are coming somewhere inside with the nose, and we've got an inside pressure coming. I still label those with rights and lefts, because the side that we're bringing the pressure from is where the Mike is going to go. So we're either going to plug that side with an A and a B gap. We might cross that side with the stack and the A gap and a Mike behind him. We might send a Mike and a B gap first with the stack behind him. So I think of it more that way, in a roundabout way, Chase. If that kind of helps answer your question, I think about how we blitz first and our movements and coverages first. And then I start to think about, if it's perimeter run, I like our trap coverage, because if we can get that, we try to keep that run inside, but if it does push wide, especially to the blitz side or to the field side, I've got an extra down safety and a trap corner away from the blitz. Sometimes it gets a little crazy because we're gapped out up front, but we don't have that extra safety. We just have that trap corner who's got to be a really good player. So if I can guess right, either formationally or field and boundary, or right and left, or strong and weak. Every offensive coordinator has tendencies when you really go through the film and you look at it. Some guys are right-hand orientated. Some guys are left-hand orientated. Some guys are big field guys. Some guys really rip and really rip the boundary on you. So, so we try to look at those tendencies with our movements and then go from there. But like I said, I like the long stick into zone teams. I like inside pressures. With some cross movements or trying to penetrate somebody to eat up a down block and bringing somebody around tight off of that, scraping paint. Zone read teams, if they're really good at it, or dart teams or counter read teams or things like that. I like 2 off the front side edge, because now you can squeeze to whatever the dive player is and get a high player to the outside part. So If it's zone read, you can squeeze the zone and high wall the quarterback. If it's bash or front side read theories, you can squeeze the quarterback who would keep on the dive, and you can now high wall the jet or the back or whatever it is on the stretch, because inverted read, bash, whatever you want to call those plays, like counter GT read off a jet sweep or with the tailback. Those are all just inverted to where the quarterback is now the dive player and the back is now the quarterback player, flipped in option mode. So, you just got to talk to your guys about things like that. So when you bring two off the edge, you know that the tightest guy coming off the edge is going to be the inside component of the option play, and the wider guy is going to be the high wall outside component. Something I did a couple years ago, I stopped talking about. I mean, I'll still use the terminology, but I got away from dive player and quarterback player, because when you started seeing bash and jet read and all those things, the quarterback is actually the dive and the outside component is not the quarterback. So a couple years back, we got burned by some things where our kids got confused with dive and quarterback and played some inverted, veer teams or sweep teams or GT read or whatever, jet sweep, power read, however you want to look at it. And kids got confused with quarterback and dive, because in those theories, they're switched. So I started talking to our guys in option football. I started talking to our guys more about inside components and outside components. So, the inside component is the dive phase, whatever that may be. It's different in bash and inverted veer or jet power read, whatever, however you want to label those theories. It's different than it is in inside veer, triple, or zone read. So we started talking to our kids more about inside component, outside component, if that makes sense. So conditioning, do you do running and getting in shape? When we're really trying to get guys in shape, Jack, we've got to do a lot of shorter sprints, maybe maxed out to 60 yards at the most. So we run a lot of 20s, 40s, 60s, trying to keep the work rest ratio somewhere where we're going to play. So trying to get 6 seconds of burst. You're welcome, Chase. Trying to get 6 seconds of burst and then maybe 12 to 15 seconds of rest. We try to match our conditioning up to the pace that we want to play at. So we're a no huddle, up tempo, no huddle team, hurry up, no huddle team. And so we're always trying to figure that, we got to get, the average play is 6 seconds long. So we need something that's going to give us 4 to 6 seconds of activity with max effort. And then, that proper 15, 20, 25 second rest period. So as we get closer to the season and we're trying to condition to get more in game shape, those are the things we like to try and do. But throughout the summer, we do the standard, Jack, like everybody else. We run 110s. We run 100-yard shuttles, which is cones set at 5, 10, 15, and 20. And you go 5 back, 10 back, 15 back, 20 back, a version of basketball suicides, if you want to look at it that way. So we run 100-yard shuttles. We run 110s. We run half gassers and full gassers, which is half gasser is one sideline to the other sideline and back. So that's 100 yards. A full gasser is there, back. So that's 200 yards. The thing with 110s and gassers and things like that is I think it takes away eventually it starts to take away your max effort and your burst. And as you progress along the way, obviously, I ran 110s as a player in college. We ran all kind of different flying sprints and things like that. And so I'm not going to say that it's not effective, but after a while, even the best players in our program start to lose that burst that you really need. So as we get closer to the season, I'm a much bigger fan of shorter sprints, 20s, 40s, maybe 60s. I love the 100-yard shuttle with max effort. If your kids can, so you put a time on your skills, put a time on your receivers and DBs, put a time on your running backs, linebackers, quarterbacks, and then you put a time on your linemen, and you make them compete to run. If we're going to do 100-yard shuttles, you got to run 600-yard shuttles, and you got to beat your time. If you don't beat your time, it doesn't count. And because you're getting a couple things, you're getting short area quickness, you're getting change of direction, you're getting burst. Hopefully you're getting max effort, because, now the only problem is the 100-yard shuttle is going to take 15 to 16, 17 seconds, and the average football play doesn't last that long. So I still am a bigger fan of 20s and 40s, and 60s because that's going to match up with the not only the burst but the play in football. You're playing a certain way in football, and you don't need to run at a slow pace for a long time because that's not how you play football, and you get rests in football that other sports don't get. So you don't need the condition to go up and back there. And it's different in soccer, it's different in basketball, it's different than every sport should condition solely on their sport. And then we'll change it up and we'll do some things on the track and we'll do some longer runs. But for the most part, I don't like distance. I don't like exercises that are not max effort. I like things that are burst, twitch, max effort. And if we can change of direction in there, those are the things we really like, especially as we get close to the season. And then the big thing for us is, we've got to have a coaching staff that understands the way we want to practice, and we got to have players that we teach how to practice, and we got to move in practice because, for me, it's been the same way for 20 years. We get after it in the summer, and we think we're doing a really good job. And that first time we go to have a practice plan, and that practice plan, last week we did defense, even though we're not allowed to be in helmets or shoulder pads or anything yet, but we can still do skills and drills and install and things like that. So, so last week on a Wednesday, we did defense, and we started off the practice with pursuit. And then from pursuit, we went to tackling circuits. And then from tackling circuits, we went to Indy. By the time we were done with Indy, those kids were gassed. And I'm thinking, we're only 10, 15, we're only 40 minutes into practice and the kids are gassed already. We've been training all summer. We've been working what we feel is pretty hard. But yet the kids aren't, you feel like they're out of shape. But the problem is it's not so much that they're out of shape. They're out of practice shape. If the intensity is high and you're doing a lot of reps that require a lot of effort and they're not used to that over that prolonged period of time, it's one of those things that practice is how you get in shape to practice. And then playing games is how you get in shape to play games. And you can do, everything that you want in accordance with that, and try your sprint work and your gassers and your 110s and your 100-yard shuttles. But to me, games are games, practices are practices. You get in shape doing, what you set out to do. So, you see these golf guys now, and they're all in different types of fitness, and that's great. They have all these fitness routines, and they're getting bigger and stronger, and they're riding. You see during the Corona, you see all these Peloton rides and crazy intense, bike rides on the Pelotons, and those things are all great. But you still got to play 18 holes, and you still got to play a tournament throughout the course of Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And the only way to get better at that is you have to, Chase a big boy. Bryson's a big boy now, Chase. But you have to condition your body to do that. You can't just come out, no matter how much you lift or practice, you can't come out and play 4 18-hole rounds from Thursday to Sunday in August without being in, even in what you would call golf shape. So, it doesn't matter what the sport is. At some point, you have to play the sport to get into shape of that sport. But that's what we try to do in the summer. A lot of change of direction drills, a lot of agility drills, a lot of form run stuff, a lot of plyos in the stadium. But at some point, you got to get out there and run sprints. You want to run fast, you got to run fast. That's the bottom line. You got to have max effort. And the biggest thing is kids got to buy in. So somebody like you, Jack, you got to understand you don't get in shape unless you push yourself. You have to know how to push yourself. You can't get in shape without a burst and without maxing, your effort. Your body's going to get used to certain things. It's used to doing, whether it be your lungs, your intake, your heart rate. Your body gets used to the workload that you put on it. You cannot improve until you put a tougher workload on your body. So it's the players really. I look at our program and what we do and my assistant coaches, and they're busting their ass doing a great job. But if the players don't put the effort in, it doesn't matter what your program is, you don't get in shape. So, hill runs are great because it's resistance training. So obviously running, uphill is resistance training. Running downhill is assistance training. So, resisted and assisted training like parachutes and bungees and things like that, and underwater activity. Those are all, resisted or assisted activities, which teaches your body to adjust to those forces and things put on it. So, overspeed training like a bungee and the old slingshot routines where you'd be on a bungee, and when that thing, gets long and then it pulls. You have to learn how to get your stride frequency faster in order to, so your hips don't come out way in front of you and you get dragged by a bungee. Overspeed training is always good. Hill training is always good. But at some point, there's nothing wrong with getting out and just running short distances and saying, hey, the problem with 20-yard sprints for kids, they don't know how to give max effort for 20 yards. 20 yards becomes a 10 or 15-yard sprint and then a jog, and that doesn't cut it. So you got to be on top of your guys. And you got to have coaches that can push kids. That's the bottom line. Gassers before we had to run one of those for the first day of freshman football practice. It wasn't very fun. Yeah, full gassers are tough because it's 200 yards, but half gassers are not the end of the world. It ends up becoming 100 yards, and you put a time on it and make the kids beat that time. So grass drills, popcorn drills, Indian runs, close quarter, sustained repetition, high intensity fun. Yeah, I like it, David. Anything that you can keep, fun for the kids and high intensity, that's what it's all about. The intensity's got to be up. Run a lot during my freshman year in practice, but it paid off because of me. A lot of times, Jack, and I don't mean this in a bad way, you run more in freshman football because your freshman coaches may not have enough coaches, or those coaches may not know enough about you may not have as much in your playbook. You may not be expected to execute as much, so there's more free time to run more. I was never a big fan of stopping practice to run or do grass drills or something like that. In my experience of playing football my whole life, when guys stop practice to make me do up downs or make me do seat rolls or whatever it was as a punishment, in the long run, when I look back at it, those are guys that really didn't know a lot about techniques and fundamentals. And anytime things got kind of stagnant, they wasted practice time by making me do grass drills. If I'm playing receiver and I cannot stalk block, you can make me do seat rolls or grass drills till I'm blue in the face. If you don't teach me how to stalk block and I don't get better at stalk blocking, it doesn't matter. If you can't tackle, you can do grass drills for every missed tackle and everything else. At some point, you got to tackle. Our receivers will miss, they'll drop passes and they'll do 10 push-ups and everything else. That's all good. I'm not saying I'm against any of that. But the bottom line is you didn't drop a pass because of a fear of a push-up. You dropped the pass because your mechanics in catching the ball with your eyes and your hands and your hand placement and looking things in and concentrating and things like that. At some point, you got to work on that skill. Otherwise, you're just going to do push-ups all the time for dropping passes. So, I don't like those things as punishments per se, because I felt like coaches do that when they don't know what to coach or how to coach. So unfortunately, Jack, you might have had the greatest freshman staff in the world. I don't know those guys and I don't mean any harm, but a lot of times freshman football runs more and the coaches preach to you that you're going to be in great shape and better shape than the other team. But a lot of times that's because they don't know what else to do with the 2 hours that they have. So that's usually why you see that. And we would run 10 plays, if you know what that is. Yeah, I know what we do a lot of stuff on air because of the tempo we're trying to play at. So Rick Trickett say something like he wants offensive linemen to get to the fourth quarter and think we're not tired practice. Yeah, that's like fourth quarter stuff and fourth quarter programs. So I'm going to give you an interesting philosophy that I adhere to. How you see all these fourth quarter programs and everybody puts their fours up like this or whatever they do. Everybody's got a tradition and I love it. It's great for culture. It's great from your program. Here's the problem with that. If you get to the fourth quarter and you're not tired, but you're down 35 points, it doesn't really do you a lot of good to not be tired. So my deal is I want conditioning to be a factor early in the game so that either we can stay in the game or that we can take a lead. Conditioning late in the game is only a factor if you're in the game. And in high school football, more often than not, one team is usually better or significantly better than the other. So if I'm playing a team that's way better than me, and we've had this happen to us several times, getting to the fourth quarter and not being tired, if I'm getting running clocked or I'm down 28 points, doesn't do me a lot of good. I've got to figure out a way with tempo and things that I'm doing within my game plan. If they're better than me, I got to try and take the legs out from them and the lungs out from them early in the game so that I can make it to the fourth quarter. I can do all my fourth quarter programs and hold, like Alabama and now Scott Cochran, who's at Georgia, they used to have their 4-quarter program and everybody's got it and it's awesome. And everybody's got their traditions and it's awesome. I'm not against that. That's not what I'm saying. You got to get to the fourth quarter and be in a ball game if you want conditioning, to be a factor. So, I lean a little bit different on that argument. I want conditioning to be a factor. I want the pace of how we're playing and everything we're doing to be hectic early so that I can make it to the fourth quarter and not only feel like our guys aren't tired, but hell, let's be within 21 points because, if we're not within 21 points, who gives a shit how tired they are or we aren't? We're probably all things considered, without a couple crazy turnovers or onside kicks, we may not get back in that game. So think about that, Chase, the next time. So getting back to what we were originally talking about. So with the America's Blitz, we had the trap coverage, right? And I don't play another coverage behind that blitz. The next thing I'll do is I'll move to my next 5-man pressure. And it might be a bear look. We might get to double three techniques with our nose covering the center and bringing the 2 stack backers off the edge. Well, for me, when I play bear, I normally play 1 free. So that is going to be the movement, all right, that I play 1 free behind. So most of the time we'll get into bear looks, and because versus 21 personnel and tight ends, I like old school, the old school 46 bear look. I like a guy up in the C gap pressing that tight end with inside leverage, and I love humming a guy off the edge outside of that. So for me, our bear movements, all right, and sometimes we line up in it, sometimes we slant the ends into it, but our 5-man pressures, that's going to basically become double B gap players, center, nose on the center, 2 guys off the edge. I'm going to play man free behind that. And we've got to change up how we do that, because if I only play man free behind the bear front, as soon as we line up in the bear front, they know they're going to get man free. So that one we have to slant to, pinch to, get to in different ways, because you don't always necessarily want to show the bear front if they know that you play man free behind the bear front. That's just me in general. I like playing man free behind bear. With the kids that I have in those positions, could I play 3 under 3 deep behind bear? Yes, I can. I like playing man free behind our bear stuff. And to be honest with you, for us, I teach bear front as a blitz. I don't teach it as a front. So we don't play enough of it to teach, 2 backers that are 40 backers, maybe, inside eye of the tackles. And you have a front side guy and then a backside guy that's going to fit off the nose wherever he's playing. We don't teach it that way. We teach bear as a 5-man pressure, and then we play man free. So it's a little bit different for us, and I choose to teach it that way because I think it just makes it a little bit easier for our kids. So the bear stuff for us becomes our man free look. And then if I want to send 2 off the edge and I want to send, maybe to the field side, I want to send a stack backer and a safety off the edge. That might be the pressure that I play 3 under 3 deep behind, and I roll the free safety down to the field side blitz. And now I have the free safety, maybe the stack mic and my backside backer into the boundary. And those are the 3 guys playing 3 under 3 deep, and the safety away from the pressure rotates to the middle. So, hey, Mason, what's up? Is that, if that's the same Mason, he's one of our JV guys. So glad you're here, Mason, if you are, because I love when players log in and hear me speak about things in a little bit different manner than I speak about them during practice. So for us, bear becomes a man-free deal. And then if I send 2 off the edge and I'm only sending 5, it might be a 3 under 3 deep deal. And then what ends up happening is we've got our America's Blitz patterns that we play trap coverage 4 under 2 deep. We've got our bear type movements where we play man free. And then also into that bear movement, I can also go with what I would call a bullet type movement, where instead of being bear with the stacks off the edge and B-gap players, I leave the ends outside and I bring the stacks and they blitz both B-gap players. Because it's all the same players involved all the time, I can go bear or bullets, and I could play man free behind those 2. Depending on the types of kids I have and how advanced they are, there's times where bear might be man free, but bullets might be 3 under 3 deep. It just depends on the kids. But what I try not to do is I try not to have multiple 3 under 3 deep rotations. I try to have the same 3 guys as the 3 under players and the same rotations all the time. And I know a lot of you are going to think about that from a game plan deal or from a multiplicity deal. And I know a lot of you are going to think about that and go, it's not fancy enough. It's not multiple enough. But you've got to be really, really good with your coaching staff and your players with a lot of reps to understand when the insertion points change. And if you change from a 2-seam dropper to a middle hole dropper, and you've got to be really good with your practice plans to know how to coach those kids through all the different things that they might need to do because they're 2-seam and they're middle hole, especially if you're exotic to where you drop defensive ends or you drop interior players. Now you got to figure out when and where you're going to teach them, because a lot of times D linemen can't teach that part of the D line coaches can't teach and shouldn't teach that part of the coverage. So now you have to have time in your practice plan to send your defensive ends to learn how to two-seam drop or skiff drop or whatever you want to call that drop. So for us at the high school level, when I go with a 3 under 3 deep pressure, unless I have a bunch of 2 to 3 year players that have been with me for a long time, I generally go in our install. Our 3 under 3 deep is the same 3 guys said. Yeah. And obviously that's the great thing about zone pressures, David, is when you get more exotic, guys are going to start dropping guys all over the place. And for us and where I'm at in high school, it's great on paper. It's great on a napkin at the bar. It's great on a napkin at a clinic. But, how much mileage do you get from your high school defensive end dropping or your high school 3 technique dropping? Obviously, in college and the NFL, you're going to get all those exotics, and I think it's great. I think it's great to study. I think it's fun to look at, but I'm not going anywhere near that stuff. So, I said before in other videos, my philosophy is let all the players do the things that they're good at doing. So I like blitzing backers and I like covering with safeties because that's what they're built to do. So let players do the things that they're built to do. So, with that being said, we'll have some corner blitzes from the boundary and some things that are a little bit more exotic just as a changeup. But we don't make a living out of it because corners really aren't blitz type players. So, so when we set up our coverages, we now know behind our 5-man pressures, I don't have to worry about changing the rotation and a guy becomes a middle hole player instead of a seam dropper. And if it's 3-by-1, we used to be a big blitz to formation team. And each week we would teach the kids, all right, if it's 2-by-2, this is the pressure. If it's 3-by-1, this is the pressure. And the pressure's got to come from the single so that, or if the pressure comes from the 3-by-1, we got to rotate the coverage so that we get a guy underneath, your 3 dropper. If they're in trips with 10 personnel open, you don't want your 3 dropper coming from 20 yards across the field so that if they throw bubble, they block the corner, they block the down guy, and your 3 dropper is coming from 25 yards away to play the bubble. That's just not good football. So you would either have to check, what we used to do. If we were playing a spread team that was maybe 20 personnel, 10 personnel, and we knew we weren't facing any 21 personnel that week, or not a lot of it, let's say, we might have a 2-by-2 blitz that we like. We might have a 3-by-1 blitz that we like. We might have a 2-back blitz that we like. We would blitz a formation and we would teach the kids a choice. So if I made a choice call, they know it's going to be one of those 3 blitzes based on a formation. We work on it over and over and over again. And it was good to us. But at the end of the day, I started figuring out that we busted and some kids didn't get the call or maybe the mic made the wrong call. And we busted almost as much as we got mileage or great plays out of it. So after a while, you start sitting down and thinking about it and saying, okay, is this blitz the formation as good of an idea as it is, as good of a philosophy? And on paper and as a theory, I think it's outstanding and as good as almost anything out there. Blitz to formation becomes almost a check with me blitz pattern in a way. And I think it's great. I'm not, again, don't get me wrong. Just understand why I choose to do what I do and why I say what I say. Because we screwed it up as a high school. I coach high school football. I live in high school football. It's outside of 2 years as a GA in college. My experience is in 20 to 21 years of high school football. That's where all my experiences are. That's where the goods and the bads and the highs and the lows have come from. So, I've only watched what we've done. I've been at 3 different high schools now. So I've got a little bit more tread on the tires, a little bit more mileage under the hood. So I know what works and doesn't work at different places. And, for me, as a base philosophy on an install, unless I have kids that have played with me as varsity players from their 10th grade year up through 12th grade, and it's year 3 in the same defense, now we're going to roll. And now we might blitz the formation, and now we might check some things. But as far as an install coming, and we're installing right now, so I'm not telling you anything that we're not doing right now. As far as an install, I am going to marry the coverages behind the pressures, and they're not going to change. So America's blitz is trap. Our bear blitzes or our stack blitzes are man-free. And then anything that might be 2 off the edge or whatever, those become some of our 3 under 3 deep blitzes. I'm looking at changing I'm looking at changing maybe our stack linebacker bullet blitzes and making that 3 under 3 deep, because it leaves us with 2 down safeties and a Mike right in the middle. Should be good to 3-by-1. Should be good to almost every formation. St. John's University in New York, which is where I played for 4 years, and then GA'd for 2 years. They dropped football in 2002 or something like that, so they don't even play football anymore. But that's a long time ago, Chase. I was in college from 91 to 94, GA'd 96 and 97, somewhere right around there. So long time ago. So we're going to start right away. America's Blitz is going to get our trap coverage, and Bear is going to get our man free. And 2 guys off the edge for zone read or whatever that's going to be 3 under 3 deep. And that's how we're going to stay, and that's what we're going to do. And then as we progress into 6-man pressures, we're going to have certain pressures that we use hot coverage, which is 2 under 3 deep, vision and break. And then we have certain pressures that are going to be zeros and peels. And then I try to marry those up, and I try to keep those as consistent as possible, so that I say this pressure is hot, and this pressure is zero, and this pressure is peel. Should you technically, for us, the way we play, all right, I have 3 safeties, obviously 2 corners, right? 3-3 stack box. If I blitz the 3 down and the 3 backers, and I leave my 5 skills out there, should we be able to play? Should we be able to go from hot to zero to peel concepts? Yes, we should. Do we all the time? No, we don't. So if all the same players are involved in all the same things, if my down safeties know how to be vision and break hot players, and my corners know how to play hot thirds, and we usually bail when we play hot thirds, and my safety knows how to play the hot middle. And when I say hot, I mean we're sending 6, so it's a little bit different than just playing traditional thirds. There's different techniques involved because you're sending 6. So if my safeties know how to play vision and break hot, but they also play man, I should be able to take those 2 safeties and play the 2s, and take the free safety and play the 3 or whatever's in the backfield, or take 2 safeties and bracket 2 backs. As long as I don't change the 6 guys in the pressure, the 3 down and the 3 stacks, I should be able to play zero. I should be able to play hot. I should be able to play peel concepts. And we have in the past, and we have done it. When we start off, though, we do not start off that way. So we'll take a certain 6-man movement, and it's hot only. We'll take another 6-man movement, and it's zero only. We'll take another 6-man movement, and it's hot, only. And then we'll take another movement, and it's zero or peel. And then as we go on, like this past year, I had some kids that were returning players for me that had played with me since 10th grade. So 1 or 2 safeties that have been with me since 10th grade, 1 or 2 linebackers that have been with me since 10th grade, a defensive end that's now at Liberty as a freshman right now, and probably not going to redshirt. He's going to be a 4-eye or an inside 3-4 defensive end for Liberty, and he's going to be a damn good player. I would do a lot of things with them just because they had been with me forever and they started with me forever. So we were able to do things, to do more things. Well, all those kids graduated. So now this year, going into our installs and going into working right now, the things we're doing in the summer, we're not playing as many coverages. We're not playing all the variations on the backside of our pattern match coverages or our away side. We're starting very basic with the kids, and we're telling them, we do half-line palm drills. We've got to get good at playing palms and 2 read. When we go to our away side, on the single side, they're going to get maybe 1 or 2 things to the single they can do. They're not going to get the other 2 versions to the single until I know they can do that. We're not going to play quarters to 2 removed yet. We're only going to play quarters to tight end flanker surfaces. We're only going to carry 2 3-by-1 adjustments right now because we graduated a bunch of kids. We've got a bunch of JV kids coming up, a bunch of new players. So my install changes, and what I do changes because I don't want to that's a great question, Chase, and I'll get to that in a minute. I don't want to overload those kids with things that they can't do just because I say, if you want to be in our defense, this is what you have to do. I think your defense itself doesn't change every year, but your install certainly does, and you just do less things, and you try to be, better at the things you're doing. Now, last year, behind some of our 6-man pressures, if I had 3 safeties and 2 corners behind the pressure, last year we played hot, zero, peel. We played peel concepts with the free safety on the quarterback in spy situations. We've played peel deals where we've doubled a guy and peeled the back. But like I said, that's because we had kids that have been in a system for a long time, and we could do that. We will not be doing that this year. Right now, this year we will be, America's Blitz went in with trap, Bear will go in with man free. Our edge pressures will go in with 3 under 3 deep, if with 2 off the edge. Our stack backer blitzes will probably go in with man free right now, so stack and those. Certain 6-man pressures will be hot only. Certain 6-man pressures will be 0 only. We'll start the season right now with probably no peel concepts, and then we'll cut back on our coverages. Yes, Albert, that's kind of the point I'm getting at. We don't, like from last year to this year, we didn't change our 3-3 stack. We don't change our coverages. We just change what we install for the kids to do and how much they do. So that comment is what I was trying to get out. Thank you for putting it out there, but that's what we're trying to get at. The only thing we may change this year is we may play more spot drop 3 deep than we have in the past, simply because A, I think it fits some of our kids. B, we're a middle of the field open team, and a lot of the teams we play don't expect us to play post safety defense. So we will not pattern match it, though. We will play it spot drop. And thanks to the article from Ohio State that came out this year, their DB coach or linebacker coach, whoever it was, talking about how they play spot drop 3 deep stuff, I think it's now safe to say that it can be done and you can do it well. So we will spot drop 3 deep. Blue collar workman ends and let players play. As long as both players and dents can jet zone box and when called upon long stick, like you said. Yeah, now with our ends, David, they have to understand how to be, they're going to long stick, but then within our base defense, they have to understand how to squeeze and spill. And then as soon as we start pressuring, they have to understand how to jet box. That is one thing that I do behind, safe to say, behind all my 5 and 6 man pressures, we will box those with our ends and our edge blitzers. And it makes it real easy for us when we're teaching blitzes. Any blitzer that comes off the edge or any end on the backside that is the outside man in the pressure, they will box the ball. We box all our pressures. We spill our base defense. So we try to keep it that simple. I know sometimes it gets it's difficult to say that it can be that simple all the time, but that's how simple we try to do it. So base we spill, pressures 5 or 6 man pressures we box. So Jacob, we talked a little bit about if you're asking about like blitz to formation stuff, I just talked probably maybe before you got in here. So when I'm done with the stream, you could always go rewatch it again. We used to blitz the formation a lot. I don't do it as much anymore. I now blitz left, right, middle, field, boundary, down and distance more than I blitz the formation. With your D-line, are you restricting what moves they can do? For example, if you get a down block, you shove and close period, or do you give them free reins? No, we don't. We never give them free rein. We never. We are going to play down block in our base defense. We're going to play down blocks a certain way. They're going to be expected to play it a certain way. We're going to try and get hands on that tackle. We're trying to take all the air out of it. We're trying to squeeze the hell out of that gap and spill. And everybody's going to play it that way. The only time it changes is when we pressure. We expect them, depending on, again, where they are in the pressure and what the technique is. Like David just said, we do have a jet box terminology, and that's exactly what I use. I tell them that they're jet players and they're box players. So though they will react to down blocks differently as a jet box player than they do as a base player. But other than that, Albert, I don't give them free rein as long as their gaps sound. That's not what we do. Now, I think I talked about this 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. I did have the kid that's playing at Liberty right now. When I was the D-line coach, I taught him differently than I taught the end on the other side. So the ends on the other side that were average high school football players spilled. The kid that's at Liberty right now dented. So how we reacted to the down block was the same. He never went up the field. He squeezed. But when that next block came, I allowed him to beat that block thick and get rid of it and make a play. The other kids, we just wrong-armed the hell out of it and made the ball bounce. So the average defensive ends, we kind of took 1 for 1. Because when you spill like that, your defensive ends here's a good argument for you, all right? When you spill the ball, your defensive ends make a play by spilling the ball, but they'll never make a play. So if you wrong arm so hard with, and again, I'm talking average high school defensive ends. I'm not talking freaks or studs. If you wrong arm so hard to make the ball go outside, you usually eat up 1 for 1. So that fullback, trapper, whoever that is, him and the end eat each other up 1 for 1. Now, if it's a GT counter or something else that screws up, if if that screws up how the GT count or the second puller gets screwed up because of the spill, then obviously you're making a play. If the ball goes outside to where your defense is ready to support it from, because your coverage and your run fit should match if you're spilling, then you've made a play. But that end never really makes a tackle in those theories. So my 6 years ago I took a new job at a place, and when I went there, they had a junior defensive end that had 80 offers, ended up playing D-line at Florida. CC Jefferson, great kid, good player, great high school player, really good college player. I never taught CC how to spill, even though he had already been taught for 3 years and he was coached well before I got there. But in my defense, he wasn't going to spill, because if he spills, he takes himself out 1-for-1, and I don't want that. He's the best player on my team. So him and the kid I had last year, Kendi, I taught them to dent. And what dent means is we're going to take it on thick, right through the mask and right through the chest, and we're going to try and get off that block and make a play. So I would teach, I even year to year, I teach my ends different depending on who they are. So average kids spill, my really, really, really good players dent. So spill a trap out, spill a counter in. We try to. We're going to spill as much as we can with those guys because they can't handle. It's hard enough for me to teach them when to spill and when to jet box. Even if you use the terminology jet box, they still get, they still kind of get, they get confused sometimes. So we try to make it as easy as when we're in base defense, you're spilling. When we pressure, you're boxing. And again, it's all about simplicity. I know that if I was in college, I probably wouldn't do it that way. If I had more meeting time and more coaches and more time throughout the year, probably wouldn't do it that way. I'm coaching high school football, probably will be the rest of my life. So I don't worry about what guys in college do. I don't worry about how they practice, what they teach, unless it fits something I'm trying to do, because, I don't have those type players, and I probably can't do or don't want to do those type things. So I just don't do it. Getting back to Chase, two gap. All right, here's where I stand on two gap. I think two gap for defensive linemen is not difficult to teach. Obviously, the skill set of the kid, if you're looking for massive space eaters, that are going to, that are going to occupy more space in your two gap theory. We don't get a lot of those kids, so it's tough to find. But I don't think two gap is hard to teach defensive linemen. In my experience in high school, where we struggle with two-gap football is getting consistent run fits from the backers behind them. So the reason we don't two-gap a bunch is because I have found it very difficult to teach the linebackers, even if you go in a system where you say, fill windows, scrape doors, clear or cloudy, even if you keep your reads as simple as that, when you are two gapping, I think the run fits change on the fly, and I think you got to be really good coaching it with really good players to do that. So we when we were a 3-4 team, we moved. We were more of a reduction team. We were more of a one gap 3-4 team, and in our 3-3 stack right now, we are a one gap team. Our nose is sent to an A gap. Our ends are 5 technique players, just like they are in an even front. And the reason for that is I want consistent run fits that I can teach and watch film over and over and over again, so our kids don't have to think. The two gap is a very fluid style of fitting runs, and it changes every down, and it changes every play. When you're two gap and stuff, you might see the same run play, and it might get fit 3 different ways 3 times in a row, and that's not something I'm looking for. If we're playing base defense and we get power, I'm going to fit power a certain way, and I'm going to expect my kids to fit it that way over and over and over again, because I'm looking for efficiency and I'm looking to be effective. So, that's what we're going to do. If you go to the higher levels, you're going to see more two gap stuff because it's probably better football. It handles schemes that they see a lot better, and it gives their D lineman a chance to, defeat blocks with their helmet where it belongs, but they can also dive inside, and the backers understand those things. And, so colleges and NFL teams that two gap, there's a reason they two gap. And I would venture to say that if you had those kind of bodies and those types of coaching staffs, that two gap might be a better way to play football, but we just can't do it. And when I say we, I mean me, my coaches, my players. We just don't consistently do it over and over again. Now, I have a dream as a 3-3 stack team. I would like to two gap all three D linemen and two gap all three backers behind them, just like a 3-4 would two gap. I would like to two gap into 3-3 because I think that would give people a whole bunch of issues if we did it right. And that would allow us to play almost every scheme we see. So if we're going to see teams that are going to be running wide zone stretch and we let our DNs two gap, and when they start getting those, if we play them thicker and they start getting reach blocks and we allow them to penetrate underneath through the B gap and cause destruction on the wide zone or the stretch play that way, to me, that's the ultimate where I would like to get to in the 3-3 stack. I would love to be two gap D linemen, two gap backers, and those six guys in the box, two gap our base defense. And then we play our coverages behind it, and our safeties become force or support players, or maybe our corners a force player into the boundary. But that is a dream of mine that I would like to get to before I put my whistle away and I hang my shoes up for the last time. I would love to play a full two gap 3-3 stack is what I would like to do. Patriots effectively execute the rotating pre-snap linebacker movement. How is that concept possible gap-wise? Does the gap alternate? I don't know if the gaps alternate continuously, war sports, or if the gaps alternate based on the block they see. So it may be a deal where they're teaching the gaps based on the block they see, and if they get a certain block combination, the gaps fit one way, but if they get another block combination, the gaps fit a different way is the best I could tell you. I don't study a lot of the Patriot stuff. Obviously, Belichick's one of the greatest to ever do it. I don't study it because I don't think we can do it. I don't study, as crazy as this sounds, I don't study a lot of Belichick, and I don't study a lot of Saban. And as a defensive player, that's probably blasphemy, and I know it is. But the problem is they are so good at what they do and so involved at what they do that I don't know if I can do it and if we can do it, so I just don't study it. And I'm an Alabama fan, so I watch Alabama. I'm going to watch 9, 10, 12, depending on my season and what's going on and what games are in prime time and on, national TV. I'm going to watch 9 to 13 Alabama games a year, but I don't choose to study what they do or how they do it just because I think it's a level that I'm not comfortable with, and I certainly am not comfortable with my staff and my players doing that. So I wish I can give you a better answer, War Sports, but I don't know exactly what they do. In your opinion, what defensive front is the hardest to plan for in a gap run scheme? I know there are a lot of variables, but generally speaking, Okie 3-4, so head up. That 3-2 box with outside backers, a buck and a Sam, whatever you want to call them, a rush and a Sam. And then an Okie box that's head up on a tackle, head up on the center. Two-way movement built in everywhere you go. They might be two-gapping. We don't know. The angles change in some of our gap schemes. Are they going to let our tackles inside in the read game? Do you have to change in your zone read game? Do you have to arc release things instead of down blocking in our gap schemes? I like North Carolina. I don't have a problem, Chase, with North Carolina. My athletic director is a huge North Carolina fan, and now with Phil Longo there and Jay Bateman there on offense and defense, they are somebody. It's funny. It's funny when you think about it. I'm an Alabama fan, not a Tar Heel fan, but in the offseason when I study, I'll study more Tar Heel stuff than Alabama simply because I think the two schemes, what they do offensively and defensively, I think fit our high school kids and me in high school better than Alabama does. So it's weird that as an Alabama fan, I don't study a lot of Alabama, but I do study North Carolina, and especially the last year with Phil Longo on offense and Jay Bateman on defense. Those are two guys that their styles the last couple of years have been very similar to what I like to do and try to do. So, Carolina's good. Whole shot argument sure did sound a lot like bracketing Lemuel Stinson, and then you followed it up with a Bear terminology, thinking more Ditka than Ryan. I don't know if it's more. It's probably more Buddy Ryan than Ditka, maybe, but probably I call it bear front, probably because of the 46 stuff that the Chicago Bears are playing, because that's how I'll play it. I'll vice the tight end, and I'll have two backers. If it's 21 personnel, I'll have, we'll be double eagle with somebody covering the center, and then we'll have wide edge guys coming and humming and boxing, and a guy over the tight end if it's 21 personnel. So it's one of the reasons I call it bear front. I guess you can call it double eagle, or some people call it double eagle, but To me, double eagle would be double three techniques, a nose, and then maybe a 9 technique on a tight end and a 5-3 look or something like that. And bear would be that guy that's physically viced up there. But for me, when I'm teaching our kids and our players, they know bear front is going to be a nose and 2 3s and then 2 5s or whatever it's going to be, or 2 9s, or so. That's how I think about bear. Yeah, I think it's a good dream, Chase. I don't know if I'll ever get to it. Maybe as I get older, if I have the balls to do it when I'm kind of, obviously, I think I'm approaching the fourth quarter of my coaching career. I'll be 48 in 3 weeks or something like that. I've been coaching for 23 years or 22 years, 20 as a head coach or 21 as a head coach, 2 as a, no, probably 23 years now. 2 as a GA, one as an assistant high school coach, and then 20 as a head high school coach. So probably in the fourth quarter of my career, and can probably take a few more chances. So I may roll that 3-3 stack idea out eventually. But I'm going to, before I hang the whistle up, I'm going to try 2-gap and base 3-3 stack. I know some coaches like Pete Carroll and Tony Dungy like 1-gapping because they just want their defense to be aggressive. They worry about players. It's not only aggressive, Chase. To me, I want the run fits to be consistent. And when you want gap things, depending on how you spill and scrape exchange and some other things with your backers, I think your run fits get a little bit consistent. Now, that's not to say that you're predominantly 1-gap. You can't just say your Mike is an A-gap player, because based on the flow, he might be a C-gap to A-gap player. And your backers have, gaps that they fit on direct runs at them, but they'll play a different gap if runs away and they have to scrape. So, it's not that everybody's 1-gap, but 1-gap philosophies, I think the run fits, I think the run fits are simpler. And for me as a high school coach, I want simple, sound, and I want to be able to. But here's the biggest thing, and I'll make this comment to all of you. You want your run fits to be something your coaches can fix and teach and practice without you having to be there all the time. So your coaches have to understand your run fits. So if you get crazy with 2-gap and stuff, and different rules for when you spill and when you don't, and different rules for when, if you have multiple run fits every time your coverage changes, I think that's hard on your players and your coaches. And I think your coaches have a hard enough time figuring that out. So I try to keep our run fits simple, not only for our players, but for our coaches, so that everybody can see that and go, hey, that's fit wrong. He needed, versus that scheme, that should have been this, so I'm looking for simple and effective all the time. Chase, they've won a lot more than I have, and probably have more longevity now, because even though they've coached at places where the stress is extremely high, you're rolling through a lot of seasons where you're only losing no games, 1 game, 2 games. I think that makes your career last a little bit longer. I've been 1-9. I've been 2-8. I've been 3-7. I think that puts a little bit more tread and wear on those tires than going 9-1 every year. If I was going 9-1 or 8-2 every year, I might coach till I'm 90. But when you go through high school football and the ups and downs of winning and losing, and when you coach where I coach now, you got to worry. I just had a guy from the newspaper contact me and ask me about what the local Super 11 team that is like our all-star team in our area. There's 6 schools in our area, something like that, and they're going to pick the best 11 players. And the 2 names he asked me about left this summer to go to other high schools. So when you're dealing with things like that, to where your 2 best players that the newspaper thinks coming back have left to go to other high schools, you're probably going to have more gray in your beard like this, more gray in your sideburns like this, less hair up here, which is why I wear a hat. Mac Brown and Nick Saban have had some smoother sailing maybe than I have, so I think they're going to probably coach longer than I do. Pre-snap, does your nose that you put into an A-gap? No, the mic communicates with the nose, if that makes sense, Ryan. The mic tells the nose where to go. So it's based on a game. Let me start it this way, Ryan. It's based on a game plan. So every week, if we're playing 1 or 2 back teams, we're going to tell the mic, based on who we're playing, that we want to send the nose to the sniffer. So if they're a 2-back team with a fullback, and they're an offset team where that kid offsets himself, we might go in 1 week and say, hey, send the nose to the sniffer, send the nose away from the sniffer. If they're a one-back team and the back is offset, we might say send the nose away from the back. We start that way with a game plan. Well, here's what ends up happening with some of the kids I've had playing linebacker the last couple of years. By the time we get halfway through the first quarter and they get involved in hitting people and the game starts to get physical and they start to get tired, we start sending the nose the wrong way based on game plan all the time. And originally I used to freak out and lose my shit stuff. Sorry, Mason, if one of my JV players is still on here. I used to freak out and lose my stuff about sending the nose the wrong way. And then I finally got to a point where I said, all right, listen, as long as you send him one way and you read and play the A gap the other way and we're gap sound, we'll live with it. Now, for instance, for argument's sake, for us, if they have an offset back and they're a zone read team, 10 personnel, let's say, I want to send the nose away from the back because based on how teams normally block the 3-3 stack, the backside guard and center are going to work the nose to the mic. So if I send the nose away from the back and I get zone, I'm going to get the nose matched up on the center by himself. And now my nose moving should beat the center play side or movement side. And now I know that zone always has to go back behind the nose. So I can now kind of tell my other guys. So if it was a zone read theory and that's the way we move based on game plan, if my nose can make the back go behind him and they're trying to read the 5 technique that we are going to squeeze and chase the hell out of the dive, I'm going to make that zone play go back up inside behind the nose to where I have the squeeze end coming down if it's a read theory, if that makes sense. So game plan wise, that is something that I like to try and do. Once we started doing it wrong, and I originally flipped out and lost my stuff about it, and then I got to a point where I said, you know what, just send the nose and play the other A gap and read the other A gap, and we'll be okay. I started getting less concerned with it because it just seemed like, our Mike linebackers, for whatever reason, as we started going through, as soon as the game started, then they started banging and the bullets started flying, quote unquote. Sorry for any military people out there. I know that's not always a good, reference, but in the heat of the game and in the heat of the competition and taking on offensive linemen and fullbacks and hitting. Second quarter would come and my mics would send the nose the wrong way all the time. And I finally just got to a point where I said, look, here's the game plan. Send them this way, please. If you don't, can you just make sure you read? As long as my mic reads the A gap opposite the nose and knows his fits based off of that, then I'm okay. So, if we're playing a gap scheme team that runs a lot of power, I'm going to send the nose to the side of the sniffer so that my mic can read that other guard, so that if they're running a lot of power and pulling that offside guard and my mic can see that, we can get an extra guy to the front side now, and I can get that mic to play either under the tackle or over the tackle based on how that tackle climbs, how flat he is or how high he is, or how much do we flatten him with our end. So if my mic is reading the guard that pulls, it's a lot quicker for him to get involved to the power side. If he's reading the gap downside, he's probably going to hum that A gap 100 miles an hour, and that's not the greatest into that gap scheme. And then my nose is going away from the power, which means now as he goes away and he gets pulled, he's either got to hump the center or try and get skinny back behind that. So if we're playing a power team, I like sending the nose that way. But that's just me. But eventually we got to a point, to answer your question, Ryan. We got to a point where we just told the mic, look, just send them right or left. I don't, whatever you do, just send them and read opposite. So, but that's just living and learning and figuring it out and, learning on the fly that we originally started, Ryan, going back to 2-gap. We originally started 2-gap in the nose and the mic, and they read off each other, and we were just horrible at it. We tried to lag the nose behind the blocks of the center, and then we tried to play the mic off of that, and we were just absolutely awful. So I lasted one spring trying to lag the nose and 2-gap him in the mic, and as soon as that spring was over, that summer we started moving the nose, and we've done it ever since. We are middle of the road, Albert, in Florida. We're a 5A school with about a little bit over 1,500 kids, so I would say we're not big. Obviously, we're not small rural, but we're middle of the road. There's 8 classifications, so 6A, 7A, 8A are all bigger than us. So I wouldn't say we're big. I do not have a football operations staff. I had an equipment guy last year that did a great job for me, but he left. So now I'm probably going to use a student equipment manager. I've had guys in the past that were stats and other things that were kind of football ops, but I don't have one, Albert, if that's what you're asking me. I do not have a director of football ops. I would absolutely love one. I did not coach Jacob Mazzara. I coached against him, Albert. I was at Ridgeview High School down the road from 99 to I was an assistant coach in 98, head coach from 99 to 2012, and then Baker County in 2013, I guess. Baker County 14, 15, Orange Park 16, 17, 18, 19. So Jacob Mazzara comes back to work out every once in a while. I haven't seen him in a little while, but I never coached him, but coached against him. And good player. And then his brother played O-line for them too, but he never played. I think it was Alex Mazzara or Alec Mazzara. I never coached him either, but I know who both of them are, yes. Thanks, Rock. I appreciate it, but hope everything's well. I'm looking forward to the documentary coming out. Keep sending me any information on a documentary when it comes out, Rock. Yeah, that's right. That's where he was at. He was playing quarterback. When he was playing quarterback at Fort Hays, Albert, he would come back to work out, and I had just got the job. And he would come back to work out, and I would let him do. Obviously, I didn't know him and never coached him, but he looked great and came back to work hard. Thank you, Rock. Came back to work hard, and I wanted my players to see that, so I always loved having him on campus. 3-3 stack previous years, but it's honestly playing more like a 5-3. My thought process is as long as the mic and nose are on the same page, we are covered. Yeah, that's my thought process too. You lose some things with pull schemes like power counter and things like that if you're just kind of plugging A gaps with those guys. But I think generally speaking, in simple terms, if C gap to C gap, if your defensive guys from your ends and your stack backers, if they picket fence, flat walled, C gap to C gap like that, it wouldn't really matter. The ball would have nowhere to go. So, in its simplest terms, that's basically what you're trying to do. You're trying to build that fence, gap to gap out and fit it that way so that you build a flat wall like that and the ball can't go anywhere. I think you can get away with it. Technically speaking, when you start to get a power counter and some pull schemes, I don't like my mic flying through A gaps all the time. I think you kind of waste them. So if he's reading a guy that's pulling, rather than flying through that front side A gap, when that guy pulls, if he now goes over the top and we spill, we can get an extra guy over the top. 4-2 team when I played where stack backers would tap the tackles on the hip to let them know where the slant. Yeah. Excuse me. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, and our guys will tap every once in a while. If we have a nose that just can't hear anything or goes the wrong way all the time, my Mike will get pissed and walk up there and tap the hip that he wants him to go. I've seen it done before. I've seen it done both ways. But that's just a matter of communication, how you want to do it. The only thing I say about tapping is unless you can somehow switch it up, those offensive linemen aren't dumb and those coaches aren't dumb. They get paid money too. So they start figuring out every time they tap which way they're slapping and which way they're going. And then, they're able to teach their offensive linemen what stunts to expect because of the tap. So we try not to do that. But basically speaking, guys, tonight, that's the topic that we were talking about was matching coverages behind your 5-man pressures. And I've kind of alluded to how we do it. So we've got 5-man pressures that are trap, 5-man pressures that are 3 under 3 deep, 5-man pressures that are man-free. Interesting thing about our 3 under 3 deep, we are not a match carry deliver team. So what we do is we actually, before we get to 3 under 3 deep, we teach our hot pressure, which is 2 under 3 deep, sending 6, vision and break. And we teach it that way because when we do go 3 under 3 deep, we actually play it the same way. We play with 3 underneath vision and break players. So all I do, once I've taught the 6-man pressure, 2 under 3 deep, vision and break, Michigan State, Narduzzi stuff. I think he was one of the first ones to do it. Now everybody does it. But if you're not familiar with it, we're sending 6 and playing zone coverage with only 2 underneath players. And those 2 underneath players are what we call vision and break hot guys. And heels are anywhere from 6 to 8 yards, and their alignment never outside the hash or depending on where number 2 is. But bottom line is they sit and bounce. And if it's past the quarterback, wherever he looks, they melt one way until his front hand comes off the ball, and then they drive that way. And you're sending 6, so you're expecting the ball to come out quick. So before we get to 3 under 3 deep, we teach 6-man pressure, 2 under 3 deep hot stuff. And then once we teach that, and we teach a lot of our guys to go through it, then when we add 3 under 3 deep, we just eliminate a blitzer and we add a middle hole dropper. So now we start with 2 hot players that are out here, okay? And then as soon as we go to 3 under 3 deep, we just add an inside hot player, and now we got 3 guys. The 2 out here are still doing the same thing, and then you add the middle hole guy, and he does the same thing. So all 3 of these guys are vision and break, all right? The interior guy is going to have a gap that he has to fit in runs. That's the only difference. The 2 outside guys, they're kind of fit where needed extra guys. You think that they might be force players to their side, but we're boxing those pressures. So a lot of times the ball doesn't get out there, so they fold back under. But the bottom line is, with the way we do it, 90% of the blitzes we run with hot coverage, the 6 gaps on the interior from C to C are taken. So the 2 hot guys don't have an interior gap, so that they're extra players on runs to either be a outside run right now they can force, but a run that doesn't get outside and goes inside, they can both kind of fold and fit where needed because we're gapped out. We do have one field pressure that the backside guy into the boundary is a B gap player, but when we're running our hot coverages, I try not to leave any open gaps on the inside because I don't want those guys to have to play a gap. But when we go to 5-man pressures, there is, sorry guys, my allergies today. I was mowing fields all day, and my eyes were swollen shut this morning, and now I can't stop itching my nose and sniffling. When we go to 3 under 3 deep now, the interior middle hole guy, he's probably going to have a B gap that's open, and he's going to have to fit runs at him in that B gap first, and then play his vision and break in pass stuff. That's the only difference. Walk us through a normal defensive practice for you guys, if you don't mind. Do you have any suggestions on practice plans? I am playing with a few practice plans. What are your thoughts? In general, Albert, let's see. In general, we're going to go probably on a normal practice plan. We'll start off usually with some type of pursuit drill. My pursuit drill is different, but it doesn't really matter. It is what it is. We'll go from pursuit to indie or tackling circuits. Sometimes we'll flip it up and do one or the other. And then from there, we're going to go to an interior run fit period where my 6 stack guys are fitting runs. Back end will probably do some type of half-line palms or half-line drill where they incorporate palms, cover 2, and man free in and change it up. Or they might be doing, depending on corners and safeties and receivers, may get together and do some press man or some off man stuff. And then we'll probably go to some type of skeleton period where we're covering on the back end, and now the D-line is doing pass rush. And then there'll be some type of, usually some type of blitz period where we're going to send our pressures and work only our pressures in one period, and then there'll be a team period at the end. And that's normally pretty standard throughout the year, obviously with special teams mixed in. Doesn't really change that much, but when it does change, one of the things that changes is somewhere at the beginning of practice or in the middle, I'll throw in some type of competition drill. So we like to do a 5-play deal, a 3rd down 5-play deal where we say it's 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5. We coach those scenarios, and then we have a winner and a loser. So we'll go 3rd and 1. Does the offense or the defense win? 3rd and 2, offense or defense win. 3rd and 3, offense or defense win. 3rd and 4, yada yada yada. After that drill's over, whoever won more snaps goes to rest, and the other one does crash drills or runs a half gas or whatever it is. So some type of competition period like that. There are a lot of practices that I start, and the first thing we do right out of flex is we go goal line, and we do goal line offense and goal line defense, good on good, just to throw some wrinkles in there. Early in the season, obviously, we're doing Oklahomas or board drills when it's early in camp, so those will get mixed somewhere in. But the static, Albert, to answer your question, the static kind of practice plan that doesn't change per se would be the one that's got pursuit, indie, tackling circuit somewhere, run fits with half line drills going on different places, skeleton with pass rush going on in different places, some type of blitz period, some type of team period. That's generally the way we that's generally the way we try to do it. Right now, Colton, amazingly, for the first time in my career, I am not coaching a position on defense. I just hired a linebacker coach. I just hired a safeties coach. I have a corners coach and a D-line coach. So technically right now, if the world stays the way it is right now, I am not coaching a position on defense. I've coached D-line before as the coordinator. I've coached safeties as the coordinator. I've coached safeties and corners at the same time as a coordinator. And I've coached linebackers. So I've coached every spot. Right now, I am in a great situation. I am not coaching a position at all. Question about sending 6 versus empty sets. I know when the offensive line is outnumbered, they're told to leave the least dangerous player. Yeah, they'll probably try and leave the furthest player unblocked. And obviously they'll try and protect B gap to B gap, and anything coming off the edge, they'll leave unblocked. But that's up to that team and how they do it. Sometimes if they have hot throws built in, they may fan it out and leave an interior pressure and throw hot off it. Bottom line is if you're sending 6 to their 5, somebody's getting home no matter how they do it. So they just need to figure who they're going to unchain. From a defense standpoint, can you manipulate the O-line to have the line leave the wrong guy blocked? Bad O-lines, yes. Good O-lines, not as much. We play one school, and the guy's not there anymore. He's at a different school. But there was a guy that was an O-line coach that played at Wisconsin. And sorry about that. Guy played O-line at Wisconsin, and he was one of the best gap blockers I've ever seen in my life. And no matter what we did, we changed the front. We came with different movements. They blocked power and counter, and everything you threw at them, they gapped it and just were a pain in the ass to stop. And I changed fronts. We disguised. We stemmed. We pressured. We slanted, stunted, everything we did. And their gap scheme, almost 90% of the time, those kids picked it up, whether it's power counter in their front side gap scheme and their backside scoops and cutoffs. So really good O-lines. I think it's difficult. It's possible, but I think it's difficult to manipulate, who they're going to leave or who they're going to block wrong. I do think my philosophy on defense is make the game as difficult for the O-line as you possibly can. I think offenses and games are won in high school with good O-lines or bad O-lines. Games are won and lost, and games are won and lost with good D-lines or bad D-lines. And probably at every level, but I think high school even more so, because I think the talent gap in high school is like this on O-line, D-line sometimes, and in college and the NFL, even between the best and the worst, sometimes it's like this. So I think that you can manipulate bad O-lines that don't have rules and don't have schemes, but the good zone teams or outside zone teams that have rules, they're going to figure it out. They're going to get it picked up. So you just try to give them different looks. You try and stem a little bit late. Don't be stagnant. Move 2-man games, 3-man games. Adding a blitzer is the best you can do. But the good O-line coaches and the good O-line teams, they're going to pick up most of what you throw at them. So it's tough to just say that they're going to have guys unblocked. So, but it's 10 o'clock here on the East Coast, guys. I have work early tomorrow morning and workouts in the morning. So I'll stay on a couple more, a few more minutes after this. Hey, Ben. We'll stay on a few more minutes after this. What's up?
Did you pick up all the nail polish class?
I think I got most of it.
Okay. No,
So I got the big pieces, and I think I got most of it, but I don't know if I got all of it.
Okay.
So we'll finish up a couple minutes here. Hey, Kuroga, how you doing, bud? Hey, coach, hope you're doing fine there. On average, what percent of plays you blitz or stunt D-line, and what percentage just good old base? From 4-5. Okay, here's what I would tell you, Kuroga. The better you are on defense, and we can talk about this two different ways. Again, sorry about that. We can talk about this two different ways. We can talk about it philosophy-wise, and then we can talk about it personality-wise, I guess you could say. There's going to be guys that are more pressure-orientated. There's going to be guys that love to pressure. There's going to be guys that's their mindset, and that's what they do. College and the NFL, there's always guys like that. There's going to be guys that are less movement and I don't want to necessarily say read and react, bend, don't break, however you want to look at it. But here's what I can tell you from experience. The better you are on defense, the less you have to move and pressure the more you can play base defense. Yeah, LSU came in late when Orgeron. Good story, Rob. When Orgeron got hired on at LSU, at that time he wasn't allowed to announce it yet, but he started calling me trying to recruit CC, and I'll never forget with his voice how he would talk, and he would say, "Coach, I can't tell you where it's going to be, but CC's going to love it." And it took about a month of phone calls before he could actually tell us that he was going to be the D-line coach at LSU. So. And CC taught me from visiting LSU that I didn't know there was a thing that they play some song and everybody sing, "I'm from Louisiana, I'm from Louisiana," some crazy like that. But he loved that place. He loved it. He was always going to go to Florida the whole time, but for family reasons and other reasons. But he loved LSU. So getting back to Kroger, sorry, I'm off topic. The better you are on defense, the less you'll have to blitz and pressure, the more you can play your base defensive structures and be really good at what you're doing. The less talented you are, the worse you are on defense, the more you're going to have to pressure to make things happen and try and create some plays. So normally it depends on talent going in. If you're better than the team you're playing, you shouldn't have to pressure as much. Now, if your philosophy or your mindset is pressure and that's what you do and you're always going to do it, then that's what you do. But if you're asking me, statistically speaking, if you're better than the other offense, you don't need to pressure as much, play base defense, and don't give them as many opportunities to make big plays because you're better than they are. If they can't block your base front or they can't block your guys, then don't worry about moving and causing all kind of chaos for them because the chaos has already started off the bus. They can't block you. If they're better than you are and you can't play base defense, then you got to start moving. I will tell you this philosophically, though. You always have to have a base defense. Your base defense cannot be movement and pressure because if you get off the bus with movement and pressure and it doesn't work, you have nothing else to go to. So normally you start with base defense and then you go to movement and pressure so that your kids have answers. So, and I know there's a lot of good football coaches in high school that win a lot of games that off the bus, they're moving and blitzing every down. And again, this is not about what's right and wrong. It's about what I think is best for me and my kids and what would be best for you and your kids. So, as far as percentage blitzes and movements, it really is a game plan type deal. When we were worse on film going in, when I thought we were worse than the other team, we were going to move up front, our D-line, more two-man games, trying to take away interior gaps and make the ball go wide. We were going to blitz and we were going to pressure more. When I felt like we were good and could handle everything going in, we'd carry all the same stunts and pressures, but I might only call them 25% of the night and play base defense 75% of the night, just because physically we were better. So hopefully that answers your question, Kroger. Yeah, Chase. You'll always hear commentators and other people talk about linemen and how many different pieces they've had and how many guys have been injured and how many different starters they've had because those lines that rotate through things like that, it's harder to communicate. It's harder to work together. 5 O-linemen up front that can play the entire year together. And then, if you're talking about college ball or even high school ball, 5 guys that play together for 2 or 3 years, those guys are going to get really good with a good coaching staff. And those guys, it's tough to move and pressure them into anything. It's tough to catch them with their pants down and have free runners, basically, is what I'll say. So, but again, guys, this will go up on a YouTube site like they all do. And then if any of you guys got on later, if you wanted to see what we talked about earlier, you could watch it on the YouTube site. But in general, for me, philosophically, the way I like to think, I like to pair my 5-man pressures with certain coverages, and I like to keep them that way. Again, we talked about it earlier. My America's blitz pattern is trap 4 under 2 deep. My bear movements are man free. And then my other 2 off the edge or stack and safety movements are 3 under 3 deep. That's how I pair my 5-man pressures with my coverages. And the reason I do that, again, if you weren't here earlier, is because I can get more reps with my kids knowing exactly where they need to be based on that call because they know that, Roger Trap is always going to be Roger Trap, and they know that Linda Trap is always going to be Linda Trap. It's never going to be, Roger 3 under 3 deep or Roger man free. It's always going to be Roger trap, Linda trap. When we call bear, they know it's going to be bear 1 free. So they don't always, anytime they hear bear, they know we're playing 1 free. So they don't have to ask. Communication should be easier. We go to, the other pressures that are going to be 3 under 3 deep. Ironically for me, I call 3 under 3 deep cover 6. Cover 6 for me used to be quarter, half. And cover 6 for Saban is like a weak side 3 deep rotation or something like that. So cover 6 is a lot of different things. Cover 6 for me is 3 under 3 deep. And the reason, and that's how I explain it to my kids, the reason I call it, trap coverage for us is 4 under 2 deep. And that's what we call it. It's called trap, and it goes with our America's blitz pattern. Our 3 under 3 deep is called cover 6. And when I explain it to the kids, the reason we call it cover 6 is because it's 3 under and 3 deep. 6 guys. 3 underneath, 3 deep. That's why we call it cover 6. Cover 6 used to be for me way back in the day. Anybody that played for me 14 to 20 years ago would know cover 6 for me used to be quarter, half, and we were a field 6 and play it type deal, or we were a cover 6 team, and if it was formation into the boundary, formation into the sideline, we'd rotate and play 3 deep. That's how we played for a long time. Cover 6 for me is now 3 under 3 deep. So, if I had the 3 different pressures, so I had bear 1 free, and then I had, let's say, Roger trap, and then I had, for argument's sake, let's say I had ricochet 6. So you're never going to hear ricochet man free. You're never going to hear Roger 6. You're only going to hear bear 1 free, Roger trap, ricochet 6. So the kids know that those patterns and those coverages go together, and then we learn how to play them, and we don't have to worry about the different rotations. And I'm getting ready to do a YouTube video on the whiteboard so I can get a little bit more in detail talking about the different rotations and whatnot. So the rotations and those coverages are always the same based on, the only thing that changes for us is when we play trap, the free safety goes to the call side. So that the 2 safety, for me, the left and the right safety have to learn how to play down, hook curl, 2 seam, and back high, deep half. That's the only thing that changes for us. So missed a line, but in 6-man pressure, man or zone, we do both. We have some 6-man pressures that are 0, and then we have some 6-man pressures that we call hot, which is 2 underneath, 3 deep. And then we have some 6-man pressures that are peel type deals that are man free deals. So, and normally I'll do the same thing with those. I'll group certain 6-man pressures are only hot, certain 6-man pressures are only 0, certain 6-man pressures are only peel. So peel for us becomes man free, sending 6. So free safety will be in the middle of the field as a post player. We'll send 6. Normally when I'm going to do that for us as a 3-3 stack team, I'm going to pinch the ends and blitz the backers off the edge because I feel better with my backers being peel players than I do with my ends being peel players. So that's just something for us that we do. So I would do the same thing, Kuroga, in my 6-man pressures. I would say that, this pressure only gets 0. This pressure only gets hot. This pressure over here only gets peel. And I would do it that way. Now, what I talked about earlier was, and I'll get into more detail maybe on a whiteboard, if I really wanted to, if it was the same people involved, the guys on the cover end should be able to play hot, 0, and peel because they're the same guys in coverage. They're not involved in the blitz. So if it was the same guys, and again, for us, we're a 3-3 stack team. So I have 3 safeties and 2 corners. So if I send 6, I have 5 skill players, what I consider skill players behind that. So those 5 skill players should be able to play hot, 0, and if we go to peel, the free safety should know that peel means play the post, and we'll play man-to-man on wideouts and peel 1 back or one of the 2 backs in the backfield. So we should be able to, with those 5 skill players, we should be able to play all 3. What I choose to do for our kids is we'll play all 3, but I'll match 1 with each pressure. So depending on what I like or why I like it, 1 pressure is going to be the 0, 1 pressure is going to be the hot, 1 pressure is going to be the peel. And again, that was the whole, hopefully, Kuroga, if you get a chance, you can watch some of this video or the earlier. That was the whole basis of the conversation was tying your coverages behind your blitzes together so that you can be more efficient and get more mileage out of it with less busts and less blown assignments because your kids start to learn through the pressures what coverages go with what pressures, and it never changes. And then you got to disguise and do those things so that they don't see. If they know every time you run that pressure, you play that coverage, and you don't disguise the pressure or the coverage, now they can call a play to beat that pressure and that coverage. So you got to be good at hiding your blitzes. You got to be good at blitzing from depth. You got to be good at changing some of your blitzes up and mugging a backer, and then, changing how you do that. Once you do that, you're going to have your backers kind of show pressure and then back out so that every time you mug, it's not a blitz. But that becomes the standpoint of disguising pressure, disguising coverage. If you're a too high safety team, you should be able to start in that shell all the time and spin and rotate, or just stay with two high safeties. That's the way you should be doing it. So, again, guys, I appreciate everybody. Hour and 50 minutes tonight. A lot of great questions, a lot of great answers, a lot of great topics. Covered a lot of information here. Look for. I don't know if I'll get to it tomorrow, but either tomorrow or the next day, I'll draw our pressures up with the trap, and then I'll draw our man free, and then I'll go through, like with America's Blitz and the trap pressure, I'll show you how we could play 3 under 3 deep, and I'll show you how we could play man free, but then I'll also continue to explain, like I did tonight, why I don't. All right, so appreciate all you guys. Stay safe out there. Hopefully where you're at, you're playing football again. Have a good night, Chase. Have a good week, Kroger. Hopefully you guys are safe. Hopefully you're playing football. Hopefully you're going back to school. Hopefully you're doing all those things, and hopefully you and your families are okay. And economically, hopefully you've made it through this mess. And I'll see you sometime either on the weekend or next week. Thank you, Alex. Either on the weekend or sometime next week, we'll do it again. So as always, guys, thank you for everything you do. Wouldn't be able to do what I do without you guys on the other end. So stay safe. Be good. Thanks, David. Be good out there, guys. Stay safe. And as always, won't play well till you play fast. See you guys next time.